Hey, so the famous Maya guy is back to teach us this awesome Power Up Magic Hands effect. Now this is actually part 2 of our series of a complete intro to BiFrost for beginners. If you haven't seen video 1, check it out. You can see how versatile and amazing BiFrost is inside of Maya. Now the actual Magic Hand effect actually ended up being a bit long, so we've split this into 2 videos. So this is Magic Hands Part 1, enjoy.
Hey, so today we're going to be creating like a power-up animation on this character's hands. This is an alembic mesh that's been passed over to me. We're just going to start off by creating like a general shape, which is going to be a sphere for our emission. And I'm just going to put it over here near the hand. And if I hit 4, I'm just going to grab a vertex from this model, maybe about there, and I'm just going to go into the rigging menu, into constrain, and I'm going to add a rivet. So that's going to give us a nice little locator that's going to allow us to parent this sphere onto the hand. So select the sphere, select the pin, hit P, and now when we move that around, it follows. So that's all good. I'm going to do the same thing on the other hand, but with a new sphere rather than a copy, just so that we get the history with it, so we could change the resolution and stuff if we wanted to. And I'm just going to sort of roughly place that around there. I'm going to once again grab a vertex on the front of the hand, maybe around here, and I'm just going to go constrain rivet, and then with the rivet selected, select the sphere, press P. Oops, sorry, let's do that the other way around. Let's select the sphere, select the pin, and then hit P, parent, and now we've also got that one parented as well. I'll just get rid of this old pin that I've got here, which is from a previous thing. So yeah, we've got 2 spheres now moving, which is perfect. So the next thing we need to do is to get the BiFrost graph open. So I'm just going to go Windows, BiFrost graph editor, click on that, and that's going to open the BiFrost graph. I'm just going to dock mine down here because it's just going to be easier for you guys to see stuff. So the first thing you want to do when creating any graph is to click Create Graph. We can see we've got an input and an output, and all of the magic happens between this space here. Anything we plug into the output comes back into Maya. Anything we plug into the input will come back onto the BiFrost graph node, and we can like animate various things in the channel box from that. So I'm going to just select this sphere, and I'm going to name it emit. What hand is that? It's his left hand, so emit left, and then with this one obviously emit right. Okay, and I'm going to drag both of those independently by middle mouse clicking into the graph. So we've got emit left, emit right. Just unselect that a minute, hit 5, see what we've got going on. Then the other thing I'm going to do is to put these guys onto display layers. So I'm just going to click display layer. I'm just going to double click here, and I'm going to type left underscore emit. There we go. And then on this one, obviously double click right underscore emit. So we've got 2 display layers. And we can just template those for a second, just so we can kind of semi-see them. And now we get to the fun stuff. So we want to create a particle system within BiFrost. And to do this, we have a thing in BiFrost called basic particles. So if I hit the tab key, we can get up our little search box here, and I'll just start typing in particles. It's an easier way to remember things. And if we scroll down, we've got a thing called Basic Particles Graph. Okay, so we just hit return. We can see that they're particles because they've got this lovely little icon. Now at the moment you're not going to see anything, but if we right click and hit explode, which is what we do with a lot of compounds within BiFrost to see all their inner parts, we can see that we've got a little particle solver going on. So it starts with source particles, and it's got a collider, and it's got some solver settings. So much like particles within Maya, N particles, etc. But we're just looking at nodes instead of, you know, labels within the outliner. So every element here has got attributes to it which show up in the parameters tab of BiFrost. So it's all your usual stuff: start frame, end frame, rate, speed, you know, spread, and that kind of thing. But we can add other things to it, influences and whatnot. So first of all, I think there are two ways we could do this. And this is where your thinking brain comes into, you know, setting up a particle system. We can plug as many different pieces of geometry as we want into this one particle source. So I could plug in the left and the right, both of those into here, and we can control both of those exactly the same. But potentially we don't want to do that. Potentially we would want one arm to start at a different frame, and we'd want a different type of spread on this arm. You know, direction, velocity, whatever. So they're things to think about when you're setting this up. So if you are going to do that, it's always a good idea just to start with one of the hands first. So we could start with the right shape, because what we can do in BiFrost is when we've set a whole load of settings in here that we like, we can just go Control-C, Control-V and copy a new source, which will then have all of the same settings on it. Which we would then plug into the sources there, and then plug in the next piece of geometry, or whatever geometry you're using. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with one source and one side of the character and see where we get to, and then once we've got it refined, we'll copy it over to the other side and then sort of tweak it from there. So we're not going to see anything at the moment. If I hit play at the moment, you're not going to see anything at all, and that is because we haven't got an output happening. But also, if you want to see particles without plugging them into an output, you can use this down here, which has got like a diagnostics and then like a partial view and a full view. If we rewind and play, we can see particles happening now, and we don't actually have to plug it into the output. Personally, I use these from time to time, but I just plug things into the output. So let's just rewind and play, and we can see, let me just give us a bit of room here. We can see what we've got going on. Now we've got lots of particles coming off of this sphere, and they're emitting forever, and they kind of don't really look very good at all. But as you can see, it is very, very fast, you know, way over real time. So what we're going to do is we're going to start playing around with these particles. So first of all, let's look at, what should we look at? Before we go into looking at the sort of rate and the amount of particles, we kind of want to get the shape looking right. At the moment, we've got like a lot of gravity going on. So that might be the first thing that I tweak. So if I go into the solver settings, that's where gravity exists. We can see that sitting there. And it's at the standard minus 9.8. If I start scrolling, we can turn that down a bit. So I'm going to turn that down really, really low, because in a little while that's going to kind of help us. So now we can see the particles really aren't doing that much. The next thing I'm going to deal with is the age of the particles. They're going on for far too long. I just want them to be spreading just outside of the sphere. Now we can do that within the particle source itself. I could come down into age limit and put that at like 0.1 and rewind and play, and there you can see the particles are kind of stopping there. Now that works just fine, but as you can see, that is like a uniform spread of age over these particles. So basically they're all stopping at exactly the same time. Now we want to randomize that a little bit, okay? So we do that using something called vary source. So we'll just start typing in vary, and then we get a vary source property node. So this basically means whatever we put into the property here, in our case age underscore limit, and then we're going to plonk it onto here. Now there's a couple of ways you can you know, kind of connect these. You can obviously undo that, plug that in there, and then plug that back into there, thus creating a little daisy chain of information. If I go back a couple of steps, and this is still connected. If you hold down the Alt key and then drag this over the top of this connection, you'll see that it highlights. And if I let go of my left click, it's then going to ask me, what do you want to plug in? So we can see geometry there. We want to plug in geometry, and it, sometimes it will make both connections at the same time. Sometimes it will just make one, but it's a handy little tip. So vary source property, we have put in age limit. Okay, if we look back at the source particles, currently the age limit is set to 0.2. I want to set that to maybe 0.4, because that will give us our maximum age limit. Okay, so if we go in here, we can then put max 0.4, min 0.001. So we're going to get a big kind of spread of randomization. We've got a bias here that we could use. I don't use it. I just leave this tick to animated. So if we rewind and play now, we should get a different kind of spread of age limit. You can already see the difference, like so. It just looks less uniform. So if you look at this shape here, if I bypass this for a second, we can see when it's like this, it's very much, you can see that strong shape going around there. It's very much not being used here, so we'll just plug that back in. And that's what's nice about this sort of procedural nature of working. So now we can see that we've got a nice different spread. So that's using age limit. Now the very cool thing about this is that we can daisy chain as many of these as we like, picking out attributes that are on the source particles. So we could do speed, rate, spread, inherent velocity, size. So size is going to be the next one I'm going to do, because at the moment they're all the same size. And once again, like age limit, I can go through and change the size of the particles, but all you're going to see is all of them changing in size at the same time. So again, I'm going to put this to about the largest size I would want is, let's go like 0.13, which gives us this size as a maximum. So I'm once again going to create a vary source property, but I can actually copy and paste this one, put it here, hold down the Alt key, select geometry, and let that plug itself in. So we need to change the property within it, and we can see that that is just called size. So we'll just go in here and type in size, like so. Now already it's changed the randomization in size, but this is based on our last vary source property because I copied and pasted it. But let's just remind ourselves the size for max was 0.13. So I'll just go 0.13, and then I'll leave that at 0.001 actually. And now we can see we've got a nice variation of size going on there. And we may find later on down the line that even the big size is too much. We can just start scrolling that down or type in a number. In fact, I think I'll do that just for now. Let's turn that down, and the small ones look like a nice size, and I think we're good there. So now we've got particles coming out and they're doing their thing. So a natural progression here would be to vary the speed of the particles. So I'm just going to go Control C, Control V, and once again I'm going to plug this in here like so. Plug that back in, and in here I'm going to type in speed. Now at the moment speed is set to 2 for its max. So we'll just put the max on 2 and leave the min on this and see what sort of effect we get. Kind of looks alright. I think that max is too high though, so let's put that on 1. Rewind and play. Yeah, looking a bit better. So if we look at the particle source again, we can see there's inherent velocity. That is switched to 0 at the moment. Which means that the particles aren't picking up the velocity from the sphere itself, from the sphere's movement. So if I press 1 there, we can have a look and see what it looks like. They might fly off all over the place because the velocity is quite a lot. So if we just pull back here, I'm just going to select the particles, the graph, just so we can see it better. rewind. We can see they are flinging off all over the place. Now with inherent velocity, I might bring that down to like 0.1, just so we get a bit of both. Yeah, there we go. That's kind of looking all right. Now, if we wanted to, we could obviously create a vary source property node for that as well. But we're not going to on this particular property. Now for the rate, so we can obviously increase the amount of particles that we emit using the rate. So if we just put that up to like 1500, we should hopefully see some more particles being emitted. Things still don't slow down at all, so that's good. Let's take that up to 3000. It just gives us a better idea of what we're doing, so we can start to tweak. So we've taken it up to 3000, and it's actually not that easy to see what's going on here. So I think I'm going to go back to my size and start playing around with that. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in the size here. This one was age, and all we do is just left click, select the name, and this one was speed. It just enables you to remember quickly which one what you want to kind of play around with. So I rewind back here, and I just think, do you know what, that max size is too much. Let's bring that min size down even. Max size too much. There we go. Rewind and play. Okay. Now, the other thing we can do, which is really cool, is use a color set for emission around that sphere. At the moment, we're emitting from every face of that sphere, or every vert. I believe it's face. So in each of these vary sources, if we scroll to the bottom, we can see color set, okay, and a color set name that we can put in there. So we can create our own Vertex color set on the sphere for emission areas, and these guys will pick it up, which will give us a much nicer look. Okay, so let's pause the graph while we're doing this, and to do that, just hold down Control and period or full stop, and that will pause the graph. You can also get to it in here. Let's have a look at our sphere first of all. Let's just turn it back on, that display layer, and then we can select it. So if we just go into the modeling menu, and I'm just going to go into mesh display, and I'm going to open up the color set editor, we can see that there is no color set assigned with that. So we want to create a new color set. We want to leave it as default RGBA and hit apply. Close that, and now we've got a color set associated with our sphere. This is just an extra step. You don't have to do this, but it's just a little bit more interesting and kind of shows you the sort of power of what we can do here. And then back in mesh display, I'm going to go to paint vertex color tool options box. Going to let that open up there, and the first thing we want to do is to flood this sphere with this black color value. So just hit flood, and now if we just turn it up to white, we've got our paint tool here, where we can just start to paint white values where we would like those particles to show up. So I'm just going to kind of like paint there. I might like it there and there. And maybe one kind of over here. Now your color set will look better the more high res your sphere is. And we've got no problems with adding a lot of divisions into spheres within BiFrost, but if we stick that up to like 60, and what we'll do is we'll just reflood, just put it back to black, flood that again, and then when we go to white, if we start painting now, we're going to get a much nicer color set, distribution and detail. So I'm just going to do something like that. You may want to do something completely different. If you want to draw a smiley face, that is up to you. But at the moment, I'm just going to create just like a few kind of points where I think, do you know what, the particles would look cool if they kind of come off around these areas. Alright, and then with that done, I'm just going to hit update. Probably no need to do that, but so we now know that there is a color set on this emitter, and I'm just going to switch that emitter back to template again, and actually let's keep that emitter selected so we can see our color set name. Right, now you can change this color set name. You can call it what you want, left hand, particle set, whatever you want, as long as you remember what it is. So with age selected, I'm going to go down here, I'm going to tick use color set, and I'm going to type in color capital S set, and let's just copy and paste that across to all of the other ones, and to speed as well, and I'm just going to paste that in there. So if we unpause the graph, and that's again a control and period, or the or full stop, whatever you call it, from wherever you are, and if we rewind and then let's just switch off that sphere, we can see that now we get an emission from those areas that we've just painted. So if I rewind and play, we've got a more interesting shape going on straight away. What is really cool now is that we can go back to this and just continue to paint, replace, flood, whatever. We can add patterns to it, anything you want. And it's always going to show up on these properties. So whatever new property you put in, you may or may not want the color set associated with it. But yeah, it's a very cool, sort of little powerful option to use here. So we've got this guy kind of working, and the only real thing that's wrong with this at the moment is the motion. It's not very good looking, and so we want to add some kind of like extra movement to it. And to do that, we want to add some turbulence, and we'll just hit the tab key, start typing in turbulence. There are different turbulences that we can use. I've got a lot of homegrown ones that I've created myself, but we just want to go down to turbulence influence, which is the basic one. So we're going to get the output of that and plug it into the influences input, which we can see here, the influences input. And now showing up in the parameters tab, we've got turbulence. So let's put this up to a number. Let's just go with 5 for now. Let's go with a frequency of higher than 1, because that's at the moment the frequency of 1 is going to give us a very big shape. We want to tighten that shape up. Basically, if you think about turbulence or a fractal, making the frequency higher is going to make more of a sort of a detailed shape. We can also use a thing called change rate, which would obviously change the shape of the frequency over time. That's set to 1 at the moment. Let's just leave it at 1 for the moment, and then let's just close this. We rewind and play, we can see that we've got some sort of motion going on there. Now for me that's not enough, but it's going to be a kind of playoff between adding more turbulence and a little bit more age, so the particles have got a bit more time to kind of emit and come out of there. So we're going to take our max age up to 0.6, and if I rewind and play now, we can see that with a bit more age we can start to see more movement. So let's actually bring that up to 1. Now it's important to know, if you bring this up to 1, you also need to bring up your original age up to 1 as well, because you can never go higher than the max of what's set on your main particles. Okay, so if we put it up to 1, we're going to get a randomization between what we had and 1. That's probably a bit too much, so I might go to like 0.7 and just rewind and play that. And we're kind of getting there. So now I think let's just give ourselves some more turbulence. I'll put it up to 6. I think I'm going to put a bit of drag on there, which is just going to kind of like ease the particles into the shapes, kind of slow them down around the frequency. Let's rewind and play again. Yeah, it kind of looks alright. It's just good to let it play at the moment after this motion to see what we've got going on. and again, this is like an artistic thing for you to sort of decide. Do I want the particles to look like this? But the first thing I've just noticed I'm going to do is actually I don't want them on at first. If we just step through, this guy, he's going to power up like kind of now, start powering up now, and then he's going to go boosh, and that is when I kind of want this to turn on. So let's go like frame 43. So let's go to the particle, start frame 43, and we just want it to look a bit more impactful when his arms go back. So let's go bam. Right, cool. That looks much better already. Boom. He's like, come on. Alright, excuse the sound effects. I just get really into these kind of things. But again, this is going to be like personal taste. But so it's kind of up to you the sort of look that you want to go for, really. So let's just drag this back up here. Now, another thing we could add a little bit of variation to is the rate. So let's just Control-C, Control-V. Let's just add that in here. Plug that in. I'm going to rename that rate. And I'm just going to type in rate into the property. So we know, let's just set our rate really high on the particles. So we're at 3,000 now. Let's just set in 15,000 because why not? And then we'll go to the rate tab, and our max could be anywhere up to 15,000. So let's just put it on like 5,000 for now, and then maybe 500 here. So we're just going to get a varied rate between that and that. Rewind and play. And again, that's given us a slightly different look, which is cool. Age-wise, I kind of like want to keep dragging this up a little bit, just because I like to see some of those particles kind of like coming off. And then maybe the size, they're still quite big. So for a rewind, play, yeah, it's still quite big, so I'm going to bring the max size down again. Rewind and play. That's better. It's starting to look a bit more magical now. Now, in terms of rate, I think we could go up a bit more. Let's just go up to 10,000. Rewind and play. And still barely any slowdown whatsoever. Like that. And that's kind of nice. And I think maybe like later on I'll perhaps put the rate up for like the final renders or whatever. But really it's going to depend where your camera is, what you're doing. You know, if your camera's here, then you want your rate to be absolutely enormous. Or maybe you're going to cut to a camera here, and then you want your rate to be large. But I mean, from back here, these particles are, you know, pretty tiny, pretty nice looking. But, you know, if we just crank up our original source just to see how far we can go. So that's at 15,000 at the moment. Let's put another 0 in. Okay. And then let's just go to the rate here. And we'll put another 0 in here just to see what the sort of slowdown is. And there we go. So it's, you know, we've still got a perfectly usable scene. It's a bit slower. We'd want to do some more tweaks, but some really nice shapes going on at the beginning here with all those curls and swirls. You can see what the turbulence is doing to this. You can also see what the inherent velocity is doing. Again, size-wise, you know, I like things to be as tiny as possible when it comes to particles. Awesome, that looks cool. Rewind, play. I mean, maybe we could even add in a bit more turbulence. Let's go like 8. Let's rewind and play. And if we tweak that frequency, we can just have a look at the kind of differences in shape we get. So if I put the frequency to 1, we can see we've just got a much wider kind of shape going on. And this, this may be what you're looking to do, in which case stick with 1. But again, if I put this to something like 7, we're going to see a much sort of tighter shape. You can see that here, just here, you can see there's a much tighter shape in the frequency of that particle. So let's try 2, because I kind of like the big shape. Cool. Right, so we've got a bunch of particles going on here, and then really it's now just going to be a case of let's copy them over to the other side and see what the final effect looks like. So with this selected, we can just go Control C, Control V, and add this up here. There's a couple of ways we could do this. Let's just use our left shape there. Now we can copy and paste all of these up there, or we can also drag in their properties to the along the line to the new source properties, and that just kind of gives us a bit more room in the graph. However, doing that, we can't change each hand independently, so that's going to be again up to you what you want to do. So for me, I'm just going to copy and paste them because it's not that many nodes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Control C, Control V up here, and they're going to go just about there, and then I'm just going to plug in that arm into the first part of the daisy chain, this out into the geometry section of the source particles, and then the source particles down into the sources. So this is our second source showing up here in the sources, and let's just switch off that sphere as well. So everything should be the same, but on the left arm. Also, our start frame is going to start exactly the same time. So let's just rewind and play, see what we've got. Boom. Now, we can see there's something different with this side straight away. What is it? Well, I can tell you what it is, and that is we haven't got a color set on this sphere. So let's address that now. So what we want to do is switch on the right-handed sphere, and we're just going to go to our mesh display, color set editor. We're going to put in the same amount of divisions to this sphere as we had on the other one. Color set editor, we're going to go a new color set, keep all of that the same, and we can actually keep that name color set actually because it's coming through on a different piece of geometry. So that's all good, and then all we have to do is use our last tool, which was the paint vertex color tool. Turn it to black, hit flood, turn it to white, start to paint, and we can create pretty much the same shape as we did before. You may want a different shape on this arm, and I believe you can actually copy color sets over from one object to another, so you could do that as well if you want to. So I'm happy with that, and then if I just switch that off, because all of these have got that same color set name, and again you may want to change that color set name, but we're going to leave it as is and see if it works. Boom, there we can see it is working. Now if we just step through this animation, we can actually see that the arms do something a little bit differently to the other arm. So I don't really like when the new particle system that we've just done starts. I think it starts too early. We should be coming up to where it starts now at frame 43. Now this one starts at 43, that's fine because the arm's back there. So I'm just going to go forward a few frames. I'd like it to start here at frame 45. That's on the new source. So if we rewind and play now, boom. I'd still like it to be slightly further on. Let's go frame 47. Let's see what that looks like. Rewind and play. Too late. Let's go frame 46. Rewind and play. That looked better to me. I would say there's too much inherent velocity on this because all of these particles went flying back. Bam. For me that's too much, and so I'm going to with that selected, scroll down to the inherent velocity, 0.02 perhaps. Let's just see if that's any better. Yeah, maybe. Rewind and play. Actually, you know, I think I could be a frame earlier. Let's try 1 frame earlier. Rewind, play. Okay, that's kind of cool. What's also sort of interesting is that because we're using a turbulence field, that turbulence field is going to create different shapes on this side because the field exists kind of, you know, it's a field. It exists in space, so you're not going to get exactly the same fractal noise happening on this as you are on that. But that's kind of cool.
So we're going to split the lesson there. Now, if you've learned something and enjoyed it, if you can give it a like, hopefully subscribe and tell your friends. And let's move on to Magic Hands Part 2.